As Cotran's rowing to the sea, there's many a flower and spreading tree. There lives a lass for me. I am a gallant weaver. Oh, she's had wooers 8 or 9 that gied her rings and her ribbons fine. But she was feared her heart would tine, so she gied it to the weaver.
The right to elect our government was won through a long and bitter struggle. Our play tells of turbulent events in Paisley and in the radical rising of 1819 to 1820, part of the history of how your right to vote was won. Weavers were in the forefront of the electoral reform movement, and Paisley was the centre of the weaving industry of Scotland. On the 17th of July 1819, 30,000 people from Renfrewshire and beyond came to a meeting to hear radical speakers on Meikle Muir. This passed off peacefully. However, a similar meeting of 70,000 people at St Peter's Field in Manchester a month later ended in extreme violence. Mounted soldiers killed 18 people and injured hundreds more in what became widely known as the Peterloo Massacre. People in Scotland were outraged. A memorial rally was called in Paisley for the 11th of September. Our first scene is set the day before this rally in a local house in Paisley.
Sorry to bother you, Annie, but I was wondering if you could be so kind as to lend me a cup of porridge for the bairns' tea the night.
We've got little left ourselves, but we'll share what we've got. Our friends and neighbours can't go hungry.
What's that you're sewing there?
It's for the big rally tomorrow afternoon. You must have heard that folk are coming from all over the place to your town, Paisley. They're coming from as far away as Glasgow, Greenock and even Ayrshire. They're all going to protest the killings and maimings of the pair souls in Manchester. And just for the folk demanding their rights to.
Aye, well, they better not try that here in Paisley. Let's hope that the meeting the morn will pass as orderly and peacefully as that one in July we had at Meikle Muir.
Now, can you not sit down for a wee while and help me sew some of the black armbands for the people to wear, Jean? It's to show we care and to mourn all them killed at Manchester.
Do you know that they're saying that we women should just stay at home, cook the food, look after the bairns and leave the meetings and demonstrations to all the men folk? What food have we got anyway? There's nae money, what with all us weavers' wages being a pittance. And what about that new law about the flour? This corn tax we've got now. We can't even bake enough loaves to feed us all.
Ah, you're so right. Us women need to stand together with the men, be seen and heard right enough. This affects us all, men, women and children.
Aye, and you know, don't you, that it's okay for all those rich folks. They make up these laws to suit themselves. Line their pockets they do without a thought for us, who do all the weaving for their fine clothes.
I heard that fine young school teacher, Alexander Thompson's, going to be speaking at the meeting. And even some women reformers living near to us will be speaking too. We need to get there and hear them all. I've heard too that the women have made some caps of liberty. They'll go in the heads of the main speakers, even if the government have banned wearing such things. We must show strength and show we care about the people of Manchester, and what better way to do it than this?
That's just grand, and we're doing our bit too. We're not going to be doing any of the speaking, but we can get really busy sewing these armbands to give to the people.
Aye, and I can make one or two of the caps of liberty. My sewing's really good. I hope that you're going to make it to the meeting, Jean. We need every single man and woman we can get to support it.
Aye, I will.
Good. We'll all gang there together then. Let's hope it's a great day to show the government we mean business.
On the afternoon of 11th September, ordinary people were determined to show their allegiance with the people of Peterloo. Some 18,000 people came from surrounding areas, including Glasgow and as far as Ayrshire. Prior to the meeting, the local sheriff and magistrates had issued a proclamation cautioning people against joining or allowing any of their families to join in such parades or processions. Anyone disregarding this proclamation and taking part in such illegal proceedings would be held responsible for their conduct.
Justice and liberty!
Annual Parliament!
Universal suffrage!
Rights of man! Against tyranny and injustice!
Election by ballot!
Fair wages for our work. We have to feed our bairns. Shame on you, Sodger. You're just a lackey for the government.
It's not for the likes of women to be here in Meikleiggsmuir. You should be hame. Come on now. Be on your way. Get hame. Get hame.
Here, I think I recognise that Sodger's face. I'm sure I do.
It's John Goldie for the pottery shop. You're nae better than a hired murderer.
Hired murderer, am I? I'll make a bullseye of your back if it didn't watch your tongue. I wouldn't miss. I'm a good hame. Best to go peacefully before the cavalry come. It's against the law to be waving these flags and carrying these banners. You heard what the magistrate said? He warned you. You'll all be held accountable for your actions.
You're nae a proper sodger. You didn't know the meaning of war. You never fought at Waterloo. Wait and see. Once the army sees their cause is just, they'll join with us.
You're rather mistaken if you think the army will side with a swarm of Cleggs. Come on, get hame before I give you a prod in the guts or a scalp over the head with my rifle.
Aye, as one of the speakers said, we're going to appeal to the Prince Regent to show his support for us. You can't forget the people.
You can't forget the people.
Do you think you can rely on the support for the king or his son, the Prince Regent? Remember Manchester? They were very happy the way the magistrates handled that. You didn't want that to end the same, do you? Come on, the chairman of the meeting said he requested everyone to get him quietly.
Let's head along the high street in the town. We'll need to gang that way to get back to Glasgow.
I will gang back to Glasgow, but we'll march through the town.
As Glasgow radicals made their way down Paisley High Street towards Paisley Cross, a minor scuffle started between them and local constables. This escalated after the provost tried to seize a radical flag. It degenerated into a week of rioting. The Riot Act was read 3 times. Those that did not obey within an hour were guilty of a felony. In the immediate aftermath, there was the imposition of a curfew and troops positioned around the town. Subsequently, warrants were drawn up for the arrest of the radicals' leaders. King George III died in January 1820, and his son, also George, the Prince Regent, who was a vocal supporter of the authorities' firm action at Peterloo, is soon to become King George IV. He was widely seen as a fool and a womanizer. His extravagance was almost beyond imagination. He had huge debts totalling around £160,000, which in today's money is in excess of £20 million. This was cleared by the Parliament, even although he still had an income of £50,000 per year, the equivalent of £6 million today. He was known to have said that the Scots don't want reform, they only want money for drink. He became the target of ridicule by local people. This scene is set in the house of the radical James Spears and his wife Mary in Johnston, along with their friends.
That Prince Regent will be no better, I fear, or even worse, if we're to believe these rumours going about, that he's full of himself, a womaniser, and a spendthrift. Huh, he's no understanding the needs of us ordinary folk. But you can't say that in the papers, or you would be arrested for treason.
Aye, what a fool that Prince Regent is, right enough. He thinks we all adore him. Aye, the way he waddles around with his great girth. Here, I can take this wreath off the wall as my crown.
Oh, hi, James, you look more like him now.
Ah, look at me now, strolling about my palace. We're a nodding, nid, nodding. We're a nodding at our house at home. My name is George, how do you do? I like pies, do you like them too? We're a nodding, nid, nodding. We're a nodding, we like pies too. I like to drink, I'm a fool, and you Scots like a drink too. We're a nodding, nid, nodding. We're a nodding, we like drink too. I like the lassies, lassies I can woo. Maybe I could woo you, or indeed you.
Oh, no thanks. We're no nodding, nid, nodding. We're no nodding, we didn't like you. Oh,
dear.
Oh, that was fun. Oh, here, I'm looking out the window here. Is that not John Fraser coming up the path?
Oh, I'll get the door. John, how nice to see you.
Hello, James. What was all that hilarity? You could hear it down the street. I've come to collect my mother. I believe she's here.
Yes, John, I'll be ready in a minute or so. We were just making fun of the George, the Prince Regent, and wondering what kind of king he will make, now that his father has died.
Being king will not change him. It would take a miracle to bring him to his senses, or to care about his subjects. I feel for ordinary folk. Things will only get worse.
Ah, John, look at these new laws the government's made. The 6 Acts, I believe they call them. They're saying we're not allowed to hold a public meeting of more than 50 people, unless the sheriff or magistrate gives their permission.
Aye, and the government have planted spies among us to pass on information on anybody who seems suspicious of contempt, sedition, or even treason. And I also heard they're shutting down the newspapers to keep people from finding out what's going on.
Aye, I heard they closed the local Glasgow newspaper, The Spirit of the Union, and that the poor editor, Gilbert MacLeod, is to be charged with contempt. He's a member of the Unitarian Church as well. God, doesn't it look good for him? He could end up being transported to Botany Bay in Australia.
There's another poor soul we must pray for in the kirk on Sunday. We'll see you all there then, no doubt.
We'll see you soon, John.
Aye, bye John, bye Isabel.
Come, Mother, we must go now. Bye.
On Saturday, April the 1st of 1820, things were about to change. A notice purporting to be by the Committee for Organising a Provincial Government was posted in all industrial towns and villages in West and Central Scotland. The notice called for a general strike and to take up arms. Looms and cotton mills fell silent as 60,000 men, women and children went on strike from Stirling to Ayr, from Greenock to Falkirk.
What happened to you last night? You were really late getting home. I stayed up for a while, but I needed my bed.
I was seeing John about the notice that was issued. There was a lot to discuss.
Notice? What's this you speak of?
Here, I've got a copy in my pocket. Let me see. It starts off with the words, Equality of rights, not of property, is the object for which we contend, and which we consider as the only security for our liberties and lives. It goes on and asks the workers to stop work and attend wholly to the recovery of their rights. It also asks the soldiers to support the cause, not to side with the government.
Oh, it's about time something's been done at last. There's been far too much talk. We need to hurt the manufacturers through the lining of their pockets so there's nothing made and there's nothing to sell.
I asked John Fraser to copy a letter for me, and I showed him the notice. I'm hoping he'll speak to some of the ministers so they can let their parishioners know. Ask them to warn their congregation to act peacefully and do what the radicals order. We want to stand together, orderly and peaceful, but showing strength in numbers.
Oh, you'd better watch you didn't get John into trouble. We need to think his position as schoolmaster. He's always very obliging, but you didn't want to ask too much of him. You need to think his wife Marjorie too. There's plenty of folk that want to make mischief. Remember yon government spies? They're sure to be sniffing about.
I suppose you're right. Tomorrow, though, I'm going to gang round the houses and the mills and speak to the workers to make sure they stop work. Make sure they know what it's all about and why we have to do this. 'Twas on the 1st of April, in the springtime of the year, and as we went up the high street, a great crowd did appear. We read a notice on the wall, to arms, it cried. 'Twas there that all the people stood and tyranny defied.
By Tuesday, April the 3rd, weaving looms and cotton mills fell silent. The notices calling people to stop and demand their rights were still posted all over Paisley, including Glasgow and central Scotland. Authorities tried to remove them and be replaced with curfew notices. Government troops were also mobilised and acted swiftly to quell unrest, arresting hundreds across the country. In Paisley, troops fired on the crowd and charged with fixed bayonets. 2 were killed and many were injured.
Oh, it's you, James, you're back.
Oh, I need a seat. It's been a long week and I'm exhausted.
Well, you've been busy, what with all that walking you're doing, going round the mills, letting them know what's to be done, to make this government take notice. It wasn't just Monday you were out leading the marches. No just at one mill either, but 3 of them. Also visit all those folks' houses, telling them to shut down their looms. You were out in all weather, it was dire. You were soaked to the skin.
Aye, but it's no what I expected, Mary. It's awful what's happening. Loads of people, he stopped work, but I didn't expect people would get themselves hurt, some even killed. That poor woman who died on Tuesday, shot through the neck she was, when people tried to stop the notices being pulled down.
Oh, what a tragedy. Just yesterday I heard from Jean about the military attacking the crowd in town. A man was cut down with a bayonet. Oh God, could it get any worse?
There's a lot of anger around. The magistrates have imposed a curfew. They're telling us what we can do, what we can't do, having to be off the streets by 8 o'clock. Look, Mary, the soldiers are no with us. They're against us.
What?
Listen, Mary. It's no safe here. They're raiding houses and arresting known radicals. It's only a matter of time before they find out about me.
Oh, I'll no let them soldiers out my door. I'll give them a good telling off.
Listen, things have taken a turn. I heard this morning at Glasgow magistrates, they've just issued a notice saying there's a reward for £300 to anyone that leads to the arrest of known radicals.
Oh my God, that's sure to be plenty of folk in need of that. Money's tight. That'll feed a family for months. Oh, it's no safe for you here, James, once people know about the reward money.
Aye, I'd best to mark myself scarce before the whole town hears about it.
Aye, and you'll need to get out of Johnson. Lie low for a while till this blows over.
Dinna you worry yourself, Mary. I'll make sure they dinna find me, even if I've got to flee the country.
Oh dear, I didn't think it would come to this.
I better make haste. I'll get word to you so long as you know I'm safe. I'll no write to you, as I'll be watching the house. I'll write to you via John Fraser. They'll no suspect him.
Aye, well, I suppose that sounds good. I'll wait for word. Now, you'd better pack up some spare clays to take with you, and I'll go hae a look in the press for something for you to eat by the road. Oh, it's only yourself, Margaret.
Oh, were you expecting someone else?
I thought it might be James returning home. It's nearly been 3 weeks now.
You heard nothing then?
No, nothing at all. And I may never see him again. He's probably fled the country. Oh.
I suppose no news is better than bad news. I'll keep my ear to the ground. And I've come to see if there's anything else I can do to help you through this difficult time. It's terrible what's been happening this past month. I got hold of a few of the broadsheets. There's been so many being arrested, too many for the local prison to handle. On the Saturday in Port Glasgow, yeomanry were transferring 5 prisoners from Paisley to Greenock Prison when attacked by a local crowd of people. The yeomanry retaliated and unfortunately many people were injured. 9 fatally, including a child of 8 years. What a tragedy, especially an innocent child.
Oh, that's awful. How could they open fire on a defenceless crowd? They should be ashamed of themselves.
I also heard from someone that other people have been arrested near Falkirk and at Straven. God help them.
In 1820 some may mind it, I'm sure. For reasons well known we met at Bonnymuir. The country was in a sad state at the time. To tell our grievance we thought it no crime. Some spies came amongst us without fear or dread, and penned down what each politician had said. And there on the muir the cavalry did us assail. With Hardy and Baird we were thrown into jail. The charge of high treason against us was brought. Our bloodthirsty foes our destruction besought. James Wilson was taken in Straven Vale and marched off to Glasgow to languish in jail.
They've arrested John. I don't understand why. They just took him off without any explanation at all. They're just going about arresting anyone they want. Oh, my goodness.
Oh, Isabel, that's awful, taking your son John. Oh, it's terrible what they're doing. And I've heard nothing from my James either. What are we going to do?
I'm sure they have made a mistake. John is a well-respected man in our community who hasn't done anything wrong. And as for James, well, I'm sure you'll get news very soon, especially once he's heard that John has been arrested.
By July, the authorities had rounded up 50 men and set about trying them for the capital offence of high treason. 6 men faced trial in Paisley. James Spears was tracked down as the letter he wrote to Mary via John Fraser was intercepted by the authorities. Spears was also imprisoned. By the time the Paisley trials were started, 3 radicals had already been found guilty and were expected to face the death sentence: John Baird and Andrew Hardy in Stirling and James Wilson in Glasgow. In Paisley, on August the 1st, proceedings in front of the High Court judges were begun in the large new church of St George's in George Street. James Spears was the first to be tried, and John Fraser was called to give evidence against him. Though Fraser's evidence was considered unsatisfactory, he was subsequently freed. At 4:10 a.m. of the 3rd of August, the jury retired to consider its verdict. 5:20 a.m.
Gentlemen of the jury, what is your verdict? How do you find the prisoner?
We find the prisoner guilty of the 15th overt act in the first count of the indictment and unanimously recommend him to mercy on account of his former good conduct.
If you find the accused guilty of one overt act, you ought to find him guilty upon the whole count.
We cannot find him guilty upon that. We consider this a special verdict.
There is no finding of a special verdict. You had better consider it again, gentlemen. If one overt act is proved to show treasonable intent, that is sufficient to find treason. If you are satisfied of that, you need to find it. So retire again to deliberate.
With the permission of the court, the jury have found a special verdict, finding him guilty of the 15th overt act of the first count, to wit, for striking work, and compelling and persuading others to do the same. It is the wish of the jury that he should be recommended for mercy in consequence of his former good character.
You're merely finding that he struck work and compelled and persuaded others to do so, and saying you only find that act and no more is no verdict.
If we state that we found it under the first count of the indictment, will that do?
No, certainly not. You have heard positive evidence of the acts that were done by this man. But what was his intentions is still a matter of fact for you to find one way or the other.
But we do not know what the man's intention was.
You must retire, gentlemen, and draw your inference one way or other. Unless you find some inference affirming or negating the allegations of the indictment, what you propose is no verdict at all. You must retire.
7:30 a.m.
The jury pronounced James Spears guilty on Monday, 3rd of April last, of striking and giving up his work in a malicious and illegal manner, and that he did not only abstain from work himself, but did compel and oblige others of his fellow subjects to do the same, and maliciously and illegally did hinder and obstruct and prevent divers manufactories being carried on that day.
Gentlemen, this is no verdict at all, as it neither affirmed or negated the charge of treason. A man striking work and compelling others to do so may not prove the compassing of the king's death. That is highly illegal, but not high treason. Gentlemen, you had better again return and consider this point.
8 a.m.
The jury find James Spears not guilty.
Oh, thank God for justice and mercy.
Silence in court, silence. James Spears, you have reason to be thankful for the issue of this trial. You have made a narrow escape indeed, and I recommend to you to be exceedingly cautious in regard to future conduct, and take no part in any similar proceedings to those which have brought you to the bar of this court. The court is now dismissed.
As a consequence of James Spears being freed, fearing disturbances and foreseeing that other prisoners would be similarly acquitted, the judges ended the Paisley trials. This led the way for other trials across the country to also be abandoned. The last trial was in Ayr on the 9th of August. The condemned radical, James Wilson, was publicly hanged on Glasgow Green at the end of August. This was witnessed by a sullen crowd of 20,000 people. Shortly before his execution, James Wilson wrote, "I die a true patriot for the cause of freedom for my country. I hope my countrymen will unite and stand firm for their whole rights." John Baird and Andrew Hardy were publicly executed in Stirling on the 8th of September. The execution of the radicals brought the uprising to a brutal end.